I'd like to introduce Mary Hess, who is with Kansas Children's Service League and works as our Parent Engagement Coordinator. Mary's work focuses on building parent-practitioner relationships through parent cafes, parent support groups, and parent leadership councils, and she's going to be the one that leads us through this webinar today. So Mary, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thanks, Rochelle. Like Rochelle said, my name is Mary Hess. I'm a Parent Engagement Coordinator at KCSL. And today we're going to be talking a little bit about how to build parent leadership within programs and communities. There are a lot of different ways to do this, but specifically I'm going to go through the Kansas Parent Leadership Model that we use through KCSL, and it might just give you some ideas or strategies on how you might be able to implement parent engagement and involvement in your programs. I also have Dina Hillman, who is with the Kansas Parent Leadership Advisory Council with me today, and she is going to be telling you a little bit more about herself and her story as we move through the webinar. Okay. So intentional parent engagement can really create strong partnerships within our programs. Not only does that increase that parent-practitioner relationship and sort of build those bonds, it also creates community buy-in and the outreach increases because of peer-to-peer interaction. So for example, I know with our programming, when we start building those parent-practitioner relationships for, let's say, our support groups or a parent cafe, those parents who we build that bond with will then go out into their communities and start recruiting other parents. And that way we're reaching more and more parents, and it's coming from that word of mouth outreach, which I'm sure many of you have found that is above and beyond the best way for us to reach families is through word of mouth. So here's some highlights of what we'll be talking about today. Rochelle did some introductions, so I have a little bit of an idea of where everyone's field of study is. Then we'll talk a little bit about the parent perspective and the benefits of that. How do we gain that parent voice? And primarily, the way we gain that here at KCSL anyway is through the parent leadership model. So I'll go through each of those different facets of the model. And then we'll have Dina Hillman talk a little bit about her story from being on the Kansas Parent Leadership Advisory Council. And we'll have a little bit of time for questions. Like Rochelle said, if you do have questions, though, you can type them into the chat box, and I'll have our colleagues here feel free to interrupt me at any point and ask those questions. And I want to make sure that today's webinar is helpful and meeting your needs. So I wanted to do a little bit of a chat poll to see what you hope to gain from today's webinar, and I'll do my best to kind of touch on any comments that you have. Also, I can always follow up afterwards if anyone has any questions. But again, feel free to ask those as you go. So building those relationships and building that leadership within our families is really a process. And we like to talk with our families a little bit about how leadership is not necessarily a position, it's an activity. So leadership can happen in families, it can happen from being on a policy council with Head Start or from leading a parent cafe. It can happen just by being there for your children. So there is a parent leadership ladder that we often go through with our families, and the first part of that ladder is engagement. And what this looks like is that parents and caregivers may start out as a program participant. So maybe they come to parent leadership or the parent leadership conference, or maybe they attend a parent night, parent-teacher conferences, things like that. And at this stage, the primary role for parents is to receive the benefits of the program, so education, training, support, and kind of bringing those materials home, offering feedback to the program. And that typically moves into involvement with many parents. So involvement is that second step of the ladder. A parent might choose to become engaged in a wider variety of activities like support groups or instead of just attending a parent night or health fair, they might offer to run a booth and volunteer their time at that health fair. And those are just a couple of examples. Ideally, the interactions that the parents will have within the program lead to the parents becoming empowered, more confident, and more competent in their role within their family and their role in the community and in parenting services. Now, ultimately, as we build that empowerment and as we provide our families more and more responsibilities, that will eventually lead into that third rung of the ladder, which is leadership. And that will be when a parent who's taken part in involvement in engagement activities becomes more of an independent advocate. They might take on a role on an advisory council. They might spearhead, setting up a parent night or setting up a, donuts for dads type of thing, or a tea party within the school. So that's what that looks like, that leadership role. I know for some of the parents on our Kansas Parent Leadership Advisory Council, one example of their leadership is not only serving on the council, but they organized an advocacy day at the Capitol. They called our legislators and our policymakers. They set up those meetings, and they really took on the total responsibility for that. And we'll talk a little bit more about that day and what that looks like later. But that just gives you a little bit of an idea of how that looks from engagement to involvement to leadership and empowerment. I went through a few examples of what that looks like, but I just wanted to give you a couple of more because I know oftentimes when practitioners talk to me about increasing parent engagement, it's just so helpful to kind of really think about what that looks like very specifically for each program. And again, it could look different across your programs. I know some of you are home visitors, some of you are in early education settings, so you're really meeting families in a wide array of settings. But some of these apply to all, and some of them will apply individually. So we can encourage parents to serve as mentors, coaches, and monitors for school activities. We can involve them in helping write grants. I know a few years ago, we had a federal grant we were applying for, and the Kansas Parent Leadership Advisory Council served as a focus group for that grant. It was regarding developmental screening, and we wanted to get their feedback on whether or not their child had received a developmental screening and when and where that happened and what types of things would have been helpful for them as a family as part of that developmental screening. So being able to gain their feedback during that grant writing process was really helpful and actually helped inform how that program was laid out in the long run. We can also enlist parents to coordinate phone call reminders, provide trainings and volunteer activities, recognition events, conduct parent cafes, and have parents be leaders in those cafes. And we'll talk a little bit here in a minute about what a parent cafe is and what that looks like for families. We can provide opportunities for parents to lead support groups, help them attend the Parent Leadership Conference. I know we typically have, I believe it's 150 families attend the Parent Leadership Conference in the fall, and a lot of our practitioners help transport families from their town, help them get registered, things like that. So offering that support is really key. We can also enlist parents to share their stories of advocating for their children and overcoming difficult situations. Now that not only empowers the parent leader who's able to share their story, but it also helps connect to other parents who may be listening, and it will help them kind of gain some of that courage to advocate for their own children. And I know we saw this a few years ago. KCSL presented at the governor's conference, and we had a parent panel. So we invited 3 parent leaders in the state to come and share their stories. And their stories of leadership and advocacy inspired many practitioners to come to KCSL afterwards and to the parents afterwards and ask how they can get more involved and how they can get their parents more involved in their programs. So being able to partner with our parents and have them present with us has really helped us, at least here at KCSL. once we get parents involved, there are quite a few benefits that come from the program, that come to programs and parents through that involvement. And here are just a few of those. So for parents, it can improve the services for families. If we have that feedback from parents about how programs are going or what they'd like to see more of, that's really going to help us reach out to them even further. And if we know that the parents are benefiting in the long term from a service that we're providing, we're better able to recruit other families and engage them as well. It provides meaningful change and opportunities to network with other families, and also models involvement and empowerment for the community. A few benefits for programs and agencies are that it enhances those relationships between families and providers, so that way we can increase responsiveness to families' needs. I know a few years ago I worked with a program who was administering an evidence-based practice, one that we've all probably heard of, the Incredible Years programming, and that's a really successful program, and a lot of families really benefit from that. And this particular practitioner, she was administering it to in an urban setting, and found that the stories that were and the vignettes that were going along with the Incredible Years programming were just not resonating with her families. The families just didn't feel like they could relate to the families in the vignettes. So my colleague, this practitioner, wrote the program developers and was able to change those just a little bit, those vignettes, so that they resonated more with her families, and that way she was keeping the programming relevant and realistic, which is another benefit for our agencies. So how do you begin to really build that relationship with parents? Because I know we all do want to see those benefits for our programs, but more importantly for our families. And the Kansas Parent Leadership Model was developed here at Kansas Children's Service League, at least as a let's see, how do I say this, as being used together in this particular way through parent cafes, circle of parent support groups, and a parent leadership advisory council. And as you can see, the way that this is currently organized is so that we really can target that parent leadership ladder, that ability to engage, involve, and then empower through parent leadership. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through each of these different program components and talk a little bit about how these all work together to move parents along that leadership ladder. The first program component is the Parent Cafe, and that's really going to help with engagement. Some of you may have either participated in cafe trainings, cafes, or hosted one for your families. I know this has been a really important piece of many of the programs here in Kansas, especially over the last 5 or 6 years. So what the Parent Cafes are roundtable discussions that allow parents to discuss their opinions, visions, ideas, with other parents and practitioners. And these are really, they're fun events, they're friendly environments, and they can be kind of that first step in engaging caregivers in different services or really building that parent-practitioner bond. It's also a great way, the Parent Cafes, to partner with other community organizations to help promote it or to offer space if we're needing space. I know that here at KCSL, we hosted a Parent Cafe Monday evening, and we were able to partner with our local parents as teachers and Topeka Public School District to use their gym at one of the local schools, and that was such a great space for us to be able to invite other families, and that partnership is just invaluable to us. So, what will you need to host a Parent Cafe? I should probably go through the format first. I know if some of you aren't familiar with how that's set up, it might be helpful to kind of give you a vision for what that looks like. This is actually a picture of a Parent Cafe at the statewide Parent Leadership Conference that happens each fall. As you can see, there are balloons and colorful tablecloths, and it's pretty full. This is one of our largest, this is probably our largest cafe every year. It's typically got over 100 different parents who are involved. But the format is typically that, we might eat a meal together. And then we have a presentation on a certain topic, anywhere from 30 to 45 minutes. And then we take the final 30 to 45 minutes to do discussion questions at each table. So every table, depending on the size of the CAFÉ, each table will have different questions that are developed by the practitioners and by that CAFÉ host. And they might revolve around a certain topic. For us, here with our Kansas Parent Leadership Model, we've been using a 3-session topic. So first session is around adverse childhood experiences and trauma. The second session, which might be hosted anywhere from a month to 2 months later, is around the protective factors and how those benefit families. And then the third session, which again is hosted, within a couple of months later, is on child development. So helping families kind of understand age-appropriate expectations, developmental milestones, any number of things that can kind of help us relate to our kiddos. And again, the CAFÉ can be around any topic that you choose as a program. You may need information about something entirely different, about literacy, for example, and you can develop discussion questions that relate to that. But like I said, each table is a different discussion topic, and during the discussion rounds, parents are able to rotate to different tables. So not only are they answering and talking about different topics at each table, they're also going to different tables with different parents, connecting with them, getting to know them. And that is, I think, one of the biggest benefits of the CAFÉ is that networking piece. So back to what would you need to host a CAFÉ? You'd need a meeting space that held anywhere from 10 to 20 parents. Typically, cafes are about 10 to 20 parents. Colorful tablecloths, table toys, discussion questions, and a snack or a meal is optional, but we found that, I'm sure many of you know, engaging families comes easiest when we can reduce some of those barriers. So we do like to provide dinner. We often are able to provide door prizes, table toys, things like that that just really give a little bit of incentive for families to take some time out of their busy schedules to come and learn something new. So how do we start that discussion? I know that can kind of seem a little bit vague sometimes, just talking about cafes, but I think the biggest part of starting that discussion is having really great questions that get parents talking, not only about the topic at hand, but about their family. I have not yet met a parent at a cafe who is not ecstatic to talk about their child. So we do try to focus a little bit on that so that parents can think about how the topic at hand, whether it be ACEs, protective factors, or child development, how it relates directly to their family and their community. So these are just our example topics that we've been using here at KCSL with the Kansas Parent Leadership Model, but here are some questions that correspond with those. So, for example, in the ACEs CAFÉ, we asked, what was your first reaction when you heard about the effects of adverse childhood experiences? For protective factors, we may ask families, what does your child do when he or she is under stress, and how do you help them manage that stress? And finally, with child development, one of our example questions is, what things would you like to see in your community that would create parent-to-parent networking? The thing about this, I should add too, is that we're asking these questions, and yes, this is generating discussion and creating networking, but we gather this information at the end of the cafes and we reflect upon it as a community and as a program, and we take parents' suggestions and everything into consideration as we continue to work with them. So one example of this was that a couple of years ago we were hosting a fatherhood cafe in Wichita, and we had about 10 to 12 dads, and these dads were really involved. They were definitely talking to each other and to us as practitioners about how they were up in the middle of the night feeding their infants. They liked to get their fingernails painted by their little girl. They were outside throwing the football around. I mean, these dads were really involved, and they were really proud of their role as a father. But one thing that they needed that came out of the cafe was that they didn't feel like they were able to connect to other dads in the community. And so KCSL decided that we should start a support group for dads or a parent networking group for fathers. And that CAFÉ was about 5 or 6 years ago, and that support group is still going today. So again, that's just one of those things where we can engage families, and then that can move us into involvement. So if we can provide families what they need from that engagement, we're potentially moving them up that parent leadership ladder into involvement. And that's what I'll talk about next, is the circle of parent support groups. Sometimes these do come from cafes. Sometimes these are also started independently, but many of ours here at KCSL have come from parent suggestions about, we really need a support group about fatherhood, or the latest one I heard about was a support group needed for teen parents. So we take those things into consideration, and if we're able to work with families on getting those needs met, we'll do it. And like I said, a lot of times that involvement does come through those support groups. And what those are parent-led, parent-directed. They're mutual self-help support groups where parents can discuss issues and concerns and information and really network with one another. The ultimate goal, too, of the support groups, I know often we'll begin facilitating those here at KCSL. However, we are often able to move a parent into the role of a facilitator, so that the circle of parent support group really does become, this peer-to-peer support-based system for families. And the support groups are an evidence-based practice. Quite a few of our support groups do revolve around a specific need. For example, parents of children with special needs, or teen parenting, fatherhood, grandparents who are raising their grandchildren. And some of them are also just general parent-to-parent support groups. So it depends on what the community needs at the time, and choose the group or the audience. To give you an idea of some of the example topics, like I said, a support group can be maybe a little bit vague, or what types of things do we discuss. We really do take the parents' suggestions into consideration about what they might want to learn more about. From month to month, it could be anything from teething to potty training. Discipline comes up a lot. We also talk about the 5 love languages of children. So how are we being emotionally available to our children? We talk about stress and positive parenting. And this, again, is very parent-led and parent-driven, so it just depends on kind of what they need at the time. But it is a consistent way to involve parents. It's also a way to build community partnerships, too. We've partnered with Head Start facilities, the YMCA, in Wichita, the Opportunity Project Early Learning Centers. So those top early learning centers are one place where we have groups. Another piece of those groups is that as parents continue to meet and support one another, oftentimes we'll see leaders emerge from those groups. We'll see people who are more and more interested in becoming involved in the community and in making a difference on a larger scale. And that's where some of our Parent Leadership Advisory Council members come from. So I will talk a little bit about the Parent Leadership Advisory Councils, and then I'm going to let Dina Hillman, who is the chair of our Kansas statewide council, talk to you about what the council has meant to her. So as that final rung in the parent leadership ladder is empowerment, this Parent Leadership Advisory Council system really helps support that. It's typically, their councils are comprised of 10 to 12 parents who are nominated by different programs. They provide a parent perspective to early childhood and community services. And each parent who participates in a council also participates in leadership training at the very beginning of the council being formed. And that training includes a number of different topics. So we have 5 modules. The first one is the principles of parent leadership. So that not only talks we not only discuss with the parents, what is parent leadership, but also what they can expect from being on the council. The second module covers the StrengthsFinder 2.0 assessment. Each parent is provided with a StrengthsFinder 2.0 book, and I'm not sure if any of you have taken that, but it is an assessment developed by the Gallup organization, and it helps you identify your top 5 talents. So we not only talk from a strengths-based perspective about what each parent's talents are, but how the council as a whole, how each individual's talents can complement one another and really help us create change on a larger scale. Module 3 covers effective communication, which is basically listening and constructive feedback. So we go through some different examples of that and ways that we can communicate effectively with one another, which leads into Module 4, working together. Problem solving and conflict resolution, as we all work together, I'm sure we all know those are some of the biggest things that we need to remember and some of the biggest skills that we need to build as we work together as a team. So we focus on those. And finally, we wrap up with Module 5, which is parent advocacy. So at that point, the council is bonded to one another and ready to start creating change. And so we provide them with the tools to advocate for that area that they would like to start changing, whether that be early childhood, helping children with special health care needs. It just varies depending on the council. This is a picture of our Kansas Parent Leadership Advisory Council. They organized and participated in a day at the Capitol where they advocated for early childhood services. 7 of our 10 council members were able to attend that day, and I should point out that each of those council members is from a different part of the state. And so they organized transportation for one another, they carpooled, and they got there, and they also organized an entire day of speaking with policymakers and legislators, and it was really, really incredible. We also have 2 other councils that are just forming this year. One is the Topeka Parent Leadership Council and the Opportunity Project Early Learning Center Council, and that is in Wichita. I'm going to turn it over to Dina Hillman now, and she's going to talk to you a little bit about her parent leadership experience and what it has meant for her to be on the council. Dina is the chair of our Kansas Parent Leadership Advisory Council and has been for the last 2 years. So, Dina, are you there?
I'm here.
All right, take it away.
All right. As she said, I'm Dina Hillman. I am the chairman of the Kansas Parent Leadership Advisory Council. A little bit about me. I have a 6-year-old daughter, and she is the reason why I do everything that I do in the leadership world. She is a special needs girl. She has ADHD, and there is 3 types of ADHD. There's one that's kind of mild, one that's kind of in between, and one that's a little bit more severe. And she has the one that's a little bit more severe. I'm not going to explain it all because then I'll be here all day. And so she takes a little bit more assistance, and it takes the willpower of me to be able to advocate for her to get the things that she needs and done in school for her. And my journey started with Early Head Start with my family consultant, and here I am 6 years later, still actively involved. This council is more to me than just a council. It's a family. I know that if I'm on the other side of the state of Kansas and my car breaks down, I have somebody to call. These people, we bonded together. We make weekly calls, and we discuss the things that we are going to do. As Mary said, we took a day at the Capitol this year, and we actually kind of took 2 days at the Capitol. One was a full day, and one was some of us were going to be in Topeka, so we made another day, so some of us were going to be there and made visits. It was a very impactful day. It really showed who we are and what we stand for, and that we believe in an education system. There's some difficulties in Kansas right now with that. So it was a good opportunity for us to state who we are and that we believe in children. And we also are doing parent leadership summits. There is a statewide conference every year, and the group of 10 parents got together this year and decided that they really wanted to see more happen throughout the year. So a group of 10 parents have made the decision to start hosting parent leadership summits. The first one will be hosted in Salina, Kansas on May 7th. We are very excited about it. We will be doing a parent cafe on adverse childhood experiences, and then we have a keynote speaker in the afternoon from KCSL. We have done it on very little of money, which is good because the council really doesn't have any money. It's just a group of parents that have a passion for children, and we want to equip and guide parents to be successful, whether that's in leadership skills or parenting skills or advocating skills. We want to be that voice for them and a sounding board for other parents. This council has done above and beyond things for me and my daughter that I can never say thank you enough for. Teaching me to advocate has been the biggest thing. 4 years ago, I probably still wouldn't have stepped foot on the Capitol grounds and spoke my piece, but here I am now, and I've done it more than 2 times. I've done it about 4 or 5 times now, and going to my daughter's school and telling the school district that my daughter needs an IEP, and this is how we're going to do it because you guys keep refusing services. And finally, a year and a half later, she's getting services. They have taught me acquainted skills that I needed. Is that it, Mary?
Thank you so much, Dina. And I think
and I'm so sorry, everybody.
No, you did such a great job, Dina. And I think that the points that you bring up are really important. So not only, has the council really built advocacy skills, but they've also built a support system within one another. And advocacy, especially, in the case where maybe you don't always feel heard, and you might feel like something's going on with your child, and other people may be telling you that that's not the case. Advocating can be really exhausting, and I've heard a lot of stories from our parent leaders across the state about that in particular. Just I had to continue to fight for my child's needs for years and years. And I think one of the things about the council is not only learning those advocacy skills, but having that extra, like Dina said, just sounding board, support system, and to continue to be that voice for your child, I think is really important. And the Kansas Parent Leadership Advisory Council has really focused on helping advocate for the needs of early childhood, and how important it is to focus on early childhood, because we know that those first 5 years are really key in a child's development. So, Dina, I really appreciate you taking time today to talk on the call, and thank you for talking about the council. And I know Dina is only on by phone, so she can't see the picture we have up here, but the picture that's up is of Dina and her daughter Kinsey walking along a dirt road. And so that is Dina. This slide is a picture of the day at the Capitol. So on your right-hand side is Dina Hillman, who, like I said, is the chair of our council. On the far left is Amanda Lawrence, and she is a council member. And in the middle is Ty Masterson, who is the chair of the Senate Ways and Means Committee. And Dina and Amanda were able to meet with him and set up a time to talk about early childhood. And if any of you are following early childhood politics right now, you'll know that meeting right there was a really important one. And those 2 council members went in and they represented the council in a positive way, and also were able to continue to advocate for the importance of early childhood services. I should also point out that on that particular day, we were able, as an entire council, to build a partnership with Kansas Action for Children, who is currently doing a video campaign to tell the story of why early childhood services, specifically the Children's Initiative Fund, is important. And the council members were able to partner with KAC and develop some videos that told their stories. I'm going to try to play a video now. I'm not sure if it's going to work, but Dina was able to tell her story to KAC, and we're going to see if we can't pull that video up. If not, I can always follow up with it after the webinar in an email to you all. I need like sound to go up. We're going to try to fix our technical difficulties here really quick and try to get the sound up, and maybe we'll restart it.
And I am from Lynn, Kansas. My daughter is 6 years old. She just turned 6. The Children's Initiative Fund is so important because it provides assistance to all families, whether it's parents with teachers, infants to toddlers, Head Start programs, KCLS. It provides for all these families, and it doesn't matter what income level is in early Head Start. My family consultant guided me how to be the parent that I am today. They came in and provided like how to cook, how to clean, how to do daily tasks, like they do prenatal visits, like how to change diapers, all the stuff that a new parent is overwhelmed by and doesn't know how to do. They're there to guide you and help you and learn how to do all that. And early Head Start definitely made me a better mom. They taught me how to advocate for my daughter. My daughter has ADHD. And as we get more into the public school, it becomes more noticeable. And without early Head Start and Head Start teaching me how to be an advocate, I wouldn't know how to advocate for her now to get her the help that she needs. Without government funding, there is no way that the Washington County Head Start facility would be able to keep their doors open. And without that preschool there is nowhere else to send your children to get an early childhood education unless you are able to send your child to Lynn Lutheran, which is a private facility school, and that's not an affordable expense. The Children's Initiative Fund has made me stronger.
So that was just one example. I hope you all were able to see that. I did make a note that I'd like to send you guys that video afterwards too, and just in case it didn't convey. But that's just one example of the ways that the parent leadership councils have been able to partner with other community organizations, advocate, tell their stories, become empowered themselves, but also be an example and a mentor to other families who are going through the same things. So yeah, I just think that was a really great example. And it actually that video just came out a couple of days ago, and all of us who were able to see Dina get mic'd up and get the camera on her on that day at the Capitol, we were also excited to see the final product of how that looked. And I just appreciate her bravery and her courage, because it is hard to have a camera on you and the lights and the mics and everything else and still convey your message in such an eloquent way. So thank you again, Dina. As Dina was saying, there is a Parent Leadership Conference which happens every fall, and this year our save the date is for October 28th and 29th. It'll be here in Topeka, Kansas. The statewide council is also hosting a regional parent leadership summit, and I can send more information out on that in a flyer after the call if you have parents you think might be interested in it. But that is May 7th in Salina. Registration is now open for that. Just to wrap up, I wanted to provide a few additional program strategies for connecting with parents. The Kansas Parent Leadership Model is just one way that we can do parent engagement and can get families more involved and gather their feedback. But there's also other ways, depending on the type of program you have, that will also benefit. So if the mission reflects the importance of parent engagement and establishes a foundation for parent engagement activities, that's really helpful. So if your organization does really value parent leadership and parent engagement, if that's part of your policies and procedures, it kind of ensures that will be a focus of your program. There should also be a well-planned program for parent engagement because it does need to be intentional. You know, as teachers, home visitors, counselors, we all get really, really wrapped up, I think, in just providing those quality services to families that if something's not planned out ahead of time, sometimes it can fall by the wayside. So being intentional about those parent engagement activities is really key. And also training for staff to learn how to successfully engage parents or to just brainstorm with one another about what's worked for each other. Every family is different. Every child's different. So the strategies that might work for one family may not work for another family. So to be able to bounce those ideas off of one another as professionals, I think, is also really key. And, you know, I'll just throw this out there, too. You know, the councils are always available, too, to provide feedback about general parent engagement strategies. I know that they've informed a lot of different programs and services, and if any of you had questions or needed the parent voice or parent feedback and wanted to reach out to the council, I know they would love to talk with any of you about that. So having the parent voice and engaging parents is really important, but I think one of the main things that all of us are focused on at a time when funding can be limited is being resourceful and being able to sustain those things that we start. So if we start a program for parents, we really want to be able to know that it can continue on in an effective way. So one way to be able to do that, or a few ways to be able to do that, are to survey parents to see what days and times work best for them. Many of our meetings with families are in the evening because a lot of families work a typical 8 to 5 work day. So like Dina said, the Kansas Parent Leadership Council meets every Monday, but we don't meet until 5:30. So we meet from 5:30 to 6:30 every Monday night by conference call. And that works for the parents, and that way many of us are cooking dinner during that time, so the background noise on calls can be really interesting sometimes, but that's what works, and that's how we all get our work done, is to be able to kind of mesh that family time and that parent leadership time together. So we can schedule more than one meeting and activity opportunity, so that way different parents can come depending on what day of the week they might work or other obligations they may have, which also fits into scheduling meetings on Saturdays. Sometimes that's the best time to do it because that's when families are available. You can also host meetings off of a child care center campus, so host a meeting in a place that's fun. Next month I have a parent support group at a park in Manhattan. So the kids can play and the parents and I can, you know, discuss whatever topics they are interested in. Offer a variety of opportunities and flexible times, provide childcare, food, refreshments, door prizes, make meetings fun, and have parents take a lead role in planning, implementing, and hosting meetings. I think that's the biggest part of sustaining the parent leadership model, is passing on that responsibility and that empowerment to other parents so that they can mentor others and continue that process. So some of those program components, like the CAFÉs, the support groups, the councils, those can continue going because they're parent-led and parent-driven. So the parents build the bond with one another and they continue that council or that service. Anybody have any questions?
We haven't seen any pop up in the question area online. So if you have any questions, feel free to email myself as the organizer, and I'll be sure to pass those along to Mary. But at this time, we're going to wrap up the webinar and just want to say thanks for joining us. And we also want to encourage you to check out some of our areas on YouTube. We have webinars like the one we did today, plus previously recorded webinars available on our YouTube channel at KCSL 100. And then we also encourage everyone to also check out our Facebook pages. as well as our Twitter accounts for up-to-date information and other training opportunities. So thank you, Mary, for providing us this great information on parent engagement, and we hope everybody learned a few new tips. Thanks, everyone.